Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to be tracing the fascinating history of one of humanity's absolutely most enduring symbols. We're exploring an image that has completely captured the human imagination for thousands of years, popping up everywhere from ancient funeral texts to cutting-edge science.
So, let's kick things off with a seemingly impossible question. What exactly connects an ancient Egyptian tomb, the foundational structure of organic chemistry, and the time-bending plots of modern sci-fi television? I know, it sounds like a riddle, but the answer is actually a single, incredibly powerful symbol. We're going to see exactly what threads tie our ancient past directly to our modern pop culture and our biggest scientific discoveries.
Well, that symbol is the Ouroboros, derived from the ancient Greek words oura, meaning tail, and boros, meaning eating. The word itself literally translates to tail eating. It creates this vivid visual metaphor for eternal cyclic renewal. You know, when a serpent sloughs its skin, it represents the transmigration of souls, but when it bites its own tail, it forms a perfect circle, representing the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It's a concept that is just universally human.
Section 1. The serpent's ancient origins.
Now, you'll see this symbol didn't just stay in one place. It really got around. From the 14th century BCE in Egypt, it slithered its way through ancient India, hit 3rd century Alexandria, and persisted all the way into 4th century Roman times with Servius Latin commentary. It's a truly global phenomenon that crossed mighty empires and vast oceans.
The ancient Egyptians actually used this serpent to map out the very boundaries of existence and the underworld. The first known representation of the Ouroboros was actually found right inside the tomb of King Tutankhamun in a text called the Enigmatic Book of the Netherworld. These texts describe the sun god Ra and his union with Osiris down in the underworld. The serpents there, which are a manifestation of the protective deity Mihen, completely encircle a large divine figure. To the Egyptians, this serpent represented the formless disorder that surrounds our orderly world, essentially marking out the absolute beginning and the definitive end of time itself.
Section 2. Alchemy and World Mythology. Fast forward to the 3rd century in Alexandria, and the Ouroboros had become a central emblem of Gnosticism and Hermetic alchemy. In one really famous text, the Chrysopoeia of Cleopatra, the Ouroboros is drawn split into contrasting black and white halves. This was their way of representing cosmic duality and the delicate balance of creation and destruction, which, if you think about it, perfectly mirrors the Eastern concept of yin and yang.
Right alongside that alchemical snake are the Greek words hen to pan, which means the all is one. Early alchemists fundamentally viewed the universe as a singular, deeply interconnected entity. For them, everything is just part of the same eternal process. They even linked this cyclical idea of endless renewal to their legendary pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone.
Now, if we head up to Northern Europe, Norse mythology takes this symbol and scales it up to literal apocalyptic proportions. Meet German Gondor. This was a colossal sea creature born of the trickster god Loki. According to the myth, this serpent grew so absolutely massive that it circled the entire world, grasping its own tail in its teeth. In Norse legends, it's this delicate, taut loop that's literally holding the world together.
Meanwhile, over in Indian thought, the emblem took on a much more deeply spiritual, introspective dimension. Texts from the early 1st millennium BCE compared the cyclical nature of Vedic rituals to a snake biting its own tail. Later on, it became a really powerful way to describe Kundalini energy, that divine power coiled at the base of the spine, resting just like a snake holding its tail in its mouth. It perfectly maps the internal energy of the body onto the endless cosmic cycle of samsara, or reincarnation.
Section 3. Psychology of the Loop.
Let's bring this into the 20th century. The famous Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung looked at the tail-eating serpent and saw more than just old art. He saw a profound psychological archetype that is deeply embedded in the human unconscious. Jung believed the Ouroboros represents how we all must confront, integrate, and absorb our darkest selves, what he called our shadow, in order to achieve true wholeness. It's essentially an internal feedback loop where the self is fertilized and reborn through self-reflection.
Building directly on Jung's theories, psychologist Erich Neumann took this a step further. He used the Ouroboros as a framework for understanding the very dawn of human consciousness. Neumann argued that the symbol perfectly depicts that pre-ego dawn state of undifferentiated infancy, that time before a child realizes they're actually separate from the world and their mother. It's this fascinating psychological starting point that's present both in our ancient historical beginnings and in the mind of literally every newborn child today.
Section 4. inspiring modern scientific discovery.
But the serpent doesn't just live in our heads or in ancient myths. It has quite literally shaped our modern scientific reality. Back in 1872, the German organic chemist August Kekulé was struggling to figure out the structure of the benzene molecule. As the story goes, he had this vivid eureka dream of a snake whirling around and biting its own tail. He woke up and realized, oh, benzene isn't a straight line of atoms, it's a closed ring. It is honestly incredible to think that a foundational breakthrough in organic chemistry was basically sparked by a hallucination of a mythological snake.
And it's not just chemistry. The loop scales all the way up to the cosmos, too. Cosmologist Martin Rees used the Ouroboros to demonstrate the extreme boundaries of our universe. He puts the tail as the ultra-tiny subatomic microworld at 10 to the negative 20 centimeters, and the head represents the vast supergalactic cosmos at 10 to the 25th centimeters. By bending those mind-boggling scales into a circle, he shows that the smallest particles in existence are intimately, intrinsically linked to the massive, overarching scale of the universe itself.
Honestly, the loop shows up everywhere in science and nature once you start looking. In cybernetics, pioneers like W. Ross Ashby and Francisco Varela used the Ouroboros metaphor to explain how biological brains regulate themselves through feedback loops. That led to the concept of autopoiesis, which are just systems that maintain themselves through self-production. Mathematicians even have a self-referential Ouroboros equation. And get this, in the animal kingdom, there is literally a creature called the armadillo-girdled lizard that physically curls up into a ball and bites its own tail for defense. The concept of a self-sustaining cycle is just fundamentally baked into our reality.
Section 5. An enduring cultural legacy.
Finally, let's look at how this ancient Egyptian funeral motif has completely saturated the media we consume today. We see it in the twin-snake Aurian amulet in Michael Ende's fantasy classic The Never-Ending Story, and in modern streaming hits like Marvel's Loki, where Ke Huy Quan plays a character literally named Ouroboros who manages time itself. We see it as an infinity tattoo exploring digital rebirth in altered carbon. It's tattooed on Dana Scully in The X-Files, it represents antagonist societies in video games like the Trails series, and it even functions as massive public art installations in Australia. Because it so perfectly captures the human fascination with time travel, rebirth, and eternity, creators across literature, television, and gaming simply cannot stop referencing it.
We've gone from the tomb of King Tut all the way to modern cybernetics and Netflix binges. The symbol of the tail-eating snake tells us that, ultimately, every ending is just a new beginning. As you leave this explainer today, I want you to look at the patterns in your own life. Think about the massive span of history we've just covered and wonder, is human history itself just one giant Ouroboros? Are we all just walking along the back of the eternal serpent, endlessly repeating our own cycle? Thanks for joining me on this incredible loop through history. Catch you next time.